Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. My name's Connor Williams, joined by Cal Brannan, and this is the monthly review of September 2024. Um, Obviously, since the last time we spoke, the transfer window's been and gone. We had a nice international break at the start of September, which means the first game was the 14th of September, which was quite nice. A nice little break, especially with the way form was going coming out of August. Obviously, it's Everton, so while there's no playing happening, there's plenty to talk about, which leads us into the first point, and that would be John Textor and all that stuff with him. Obviously, he did an interview with Sky Sports. Um, Quite a lot of quotes come out of the man. One being asked if he wanted to own us. He was like asked, "Do you want to be president of the United States?" Of course, you do. Stuff like that. He was talking a lot about in Everton, almost making it seem like it was nailed on. It was going to happen. I think in his head it was nailed on. He was talking like it was a done deal. Um, Obviously, this this gave me. I don't know about you, Cal, but it gave me vibes of when Vita Pereira was up for the manager's job and he went on Sky Sports. It really gave me vibes of that. Of like, why are you telling Sky this? Like, it almost felt like the job interview on Sky. Yeah, I don't know about you. What did you make of him going on Sky just talking? Because when he was talking, he did make it sound he still had his shares in Palace, but made it sound like it was almost inevitable he's going to own the club, and was talking like he'd already got the keys to the Palace.
Yeah, I don't think he helped himself with, what we'll get to it later in the month. I think that probably played a massive part in the Friedkins being able to come under his nose and just bang, take it almost immediately without any warning. Um, I think it was one of those where I think I'm trying to think about a word. It's very, very NFL sort of their owners, big, love the attention. They try to get, I mean, Texter, you've seen it with, what is it, Botafogo? There's that really famous clip of him losing his head after a game. I think he just seems like one of those that I think he struggles keeping his mouth closed, to be honest. And I don't necessarily think it were a bad thing. I quite like that he was clearly interested, and I think a lot of the fans appreciated that. It was obvious he was very interested in the club, even though there were some reports he was just using it to get more shares in Palace or something like that. But at the end of the day, he did seem genuinely interested. And for me, it would have been one of those where I don't know how much he plays into the investment in Palace, but there's been a decent amount, more than us anyway, over the past few years, and Palace have. So I don't know how much he played into that, but I think it was just one of those things where I think he ended up shooting himself in the foot in the end. But at the time, I wasn't really bothered by it. But it did very much remind me of the Vitor Pereira thing, just without the fan outrage afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, he was very complimentary about us, which you would be, that's just 101. It'd be really silly for him to, slate us when he's trying to own us because you want to get on side. But he, mentioned about a big football fan. I think he said his grandfather, great grandfather, was English. His pastor's a Wolves fan, and he did say that he looked at us a bit like the White House and saying, "I'm going to live there someday." He thought about he'd own Leighton Orient. He said it, and he was like, "I'd usually look at small clubs like Leighton Orient, Stockport, and I'd watch them. But Everton, I never thought about. It was like looking at the White House and saying, I'm going to live there someday," which is obviously, and then it says when it comes available, you've got to jump at it, which is obviously really, really nice to say about Everton. But when he's saying it, I'm thinking, you still have stakes in a Premier League football club in Palace. Like he's saying it like and mentioning the smaller clubs, and I'm like, but you're already at the Premier League table. You're not, down in League One, Two, the Championship. You're already at the Premier League table. You've got a decent amount of stake in Palace. Obviously, he's not majority shareholder like you'd like, but he's still got enough, there. So it was just a bit weird. Like it was nice to hear, and it's the job of getting fans on side. But it made him seem a little bit more rags to riches Cinderella story than he's letting on because he does own enough stake in a Premier League football club where he's, like you said, battling for the other half of the shares and was rumored to be trying to use us as a tool to get it. Um, it was just mental. Some of the quotes he's come out with about us were nice, but um, some of them were interesting. He's an interesting guy. You know, he mentioned about the Premier League and PSR and stuff, and mentioned that obviously being with Palace, he knows the difficulties of it. But apparently, one of the biggest things that come out of this was similar to even more why I get Pereira vibes from it, is that Fahad Mashiri and Everton insiders didn't like him chatting about it like this, and rumored to be one of the reasons that this takeover stalled. That and he still had to sell his shares in Palace, so this was going to drag on with him for however long it'd take him to sell them. But yeah, interesting. Once again, another man that was going to do a deal with Mashiri, jumped the gun, went on live TV or broadcast, um, spoke almost as if he'd got it, and Mashiri's gone, no. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
I do find it a bit ironic that Mr. Hello Jim doesn't like other people going on Figgy, and I just it's just popped. I think I saw it on Twitter. I'm not going to take full credit for me saying this. I think I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, it's a bit weird that when the first early years he owned us, and I think even before he owned us, he was going on Talk Sport and stuff like that. But so I do find it quite ironic. But yeah, I think it's with Texter. I think it's like flirting with another girl across the table while your wife sat next to you. It's not exactly the smartest idea to do, and I think obviously it probably makes him with Palace a little more difficult. I do think Texter's probably going to be in for the next mid-table lower Premier League club that becomes available. Won't surprise me if one becomes available soon, especially if you maybe a team like Wolves goes down. I could see the Chinese investment if it's still them pulling out. I could see, yeah, I could see it happening. But yeah, I think Texter's probably either going to take full control of Palace or just the next one that becomes available. To be honest with you, I think it's very weird though. Like I said, how Mashiri it seemed to annoy him when he has quite a history of doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it is quite ironic. When you were on about Texton, it made me think that he's still got to he's got to go back to Palace now after flirting and looking like he was trying to leave. I don't know how Palace fans will take that. I think if the shoe was on the other foot, we'd be
Oh, he'd
having
be
tests
fuming.
throughout.
It's the equivalent of him getting caught with his pants around his ankles. It's not exactly a good look, and it wouldn't surprise me if this gets him forced out of Palace or forced to sell by what's his name, the owner of Palace. Oh, what's his
Parish,
name?
isn't it?
Parish.
Douglas
Yeah, I was
Parish.
gonna say because it's not like Parish is a quiet owner either. Parish is another one who whenever he gets the chance, he's happy to speak. So it's like it wouldn't surprise me, or if he just fully tries to settle in with Palace and tries to fully take them over, which I don't think Parish will let up. But the one thing I also find ironic about Texter is I'm 100% certain he sold Everton Jake O'Brien and gave Mangala on loan as almost like favours to help him with Mashiri. Like, look, I gave you him for. It wouldn't surprise me if we end up finding out he gave us O'Brien for a little bit cheaper than initially expected, and obviously Mangala being that the fact that Leon initially wanted an option slash obligation to buy, and then Texter suddenly becomes interested, and that option obligation to buy suddenly disappears. I did find that quite ironic that he's probably gone through a lot of effort to try build up a relationship between the two clubs, and then all of a sudden it's gone down in flames because he got a bit too over ambitious with himself.
Yeah, it does. They were. Luckily, it's not money that he's put in now that we'd have to pay him back because the amount of lenders that we're going to have to pay back is, ever growing. But it's fine with Mangala because although he's having a decent start, we can't afford him. We can simply just send him back. Um, First game of the season, though, like I said, 14th of September, Aston Villa 3-2. Carrying on a bit of a thing where we take the lead and then sort of let it go. I mean, I must admit, I think this was I know it's annoying to lose a lead and nobody likes to drop a lead and drop points. For us to have even been leading, by 2 goals, to nil at like the half hour point, I would before the game, if you'd said that, I'd have been shocked. When I saw it, I was like, "This is great, but there's still a long time to go." You're only a third into the match. There's two thirds to go. And to be fair, they're a very, very good outfit. They're, in the Champions League this season. They've got a great manager, great players, and the goal for the winner is just it's an extraordinary goal.
Oh, it's better than the Garnacho one. It's it's probably it might be the best goal I've ever seen Everton concede. But
which
it's
is
ridiculous. It's like something out of FIFA. It was ridiculous. It was. I think one thing is that I still think this is sort of where my siding with the Dyshout Brigade was at its most because I like you can't bottle 2-0 leads in a row. You can't do it. And I think I've got the right game. But is this the one where Ollie Watkins' first header was basically a tapping because Michael Keane forgot how to jump and he just
uh,
watched the ball go past him while Watkins headed it in? I think I can understand. I'm not going to blame Dyche for the Duran goal or even losing to Villa because, you look at Villa's results, they only drew 2-2 with Ipswich because Diego Carlos's ankles forgot how to work. And look, their other loss was at Arsenal, which was probably a game they should have won. They've battered a team in the Champions League. And to be honest, that's what I said, looking in a position where they might qualify again. So I think it's one of those where I think there were positive signs in this game. I think McNeil had a good start to the season as well, but I think this was the game where McNeil. I think a lot of people started to take more notice of how well he was playing, and everyone was starting to be like, "What is going on here?" I think Calvert-Lewin again getting another goal in back-to-back games really helped. I think Calvert-Lewin had another good game back-to-back, which was always nice. So I think it was one where I get. To be honest, I'm not going to say I jinxed it, but I can remember putting into a group chat. We went 2-0 down, saying it's about to happen again, isn't it? But I think it's one where I can understand the Dyshout Brigade in a wider context of you've bottled a 2-0 lead 2 games in a row after having like a week to get everyone back on side. But I think if you look at more recent performances, um, with certain centre backs being taken out of the team, you can start to understand why some things like this have happened.
Yeah, I mean, we were getting abs. I think it's the performance. I mean, again, these are a really, really good team. I think it adds that Villa were, well, they're seen as a similar stature to us. At one point, were relegated early, more recent than us, within the last 10 years, have come up and now leapfrogged us. And I think that sticks in fans' heads and that's annoyed them a little bit, which I completely understand. As a fan myself, that is a bit infuriating to watch Villa leapfrog us, even with a relegation on their belt. Um, and they did pepper us. They had a lot of the ball and a lot of the chances. But again, they're a really good outfit, which I know will irritate people because, like I just said, it's annoying to think they've leapfrogged us, but they have. That's
They've,
just
oh, they've leapfrogged us by miles as well.
yeah, and it is annoying, but it's tough. There's not much we can do now.
It's how football works, unfortunately, when you've got a team that have got good owners and the right ambition in place for things. Unfortunately, things like this happen. And you look at Villa's manager, you look at Villa's team, and you look at where Villa are now. Unfortunately, yeah, Villa are at that same table with Liverpool, Tottenham, all those teams, those big six now. They're at that table. And I think, unfortunately, I think it would have been the same thing if we played against any of those other teams in the six as well. So I think it's just one of those things that, again, I think if we would have went 1-0 up and lost 2-1, fans wouldn't have been annoyed. But the fact that it was another 2-0 bottle is, again, I think a lot of people aren't going to sit and go, well, that Duran's never going to score a goal like that in his career. Unfortunately, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. No, I think naturally I can understand the pessimism of fans because, again, still haven't won a game at this point. Looked like we did have a few moments in Villa, but it felt like we didn't have the killer instinct to really, you know, put your foot on their throat and finish the job. There was no real killer instinct from them, but I think this was one where I just think this was one where it's one of those games where unfortunately you have to kind of shrug it off and move on.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Obviously Villa are a good side as well, which needs to be said. Um, Next we're going into the Everton Southampton game. Give me your thoughts on that one.
This one, on the other hand, was a bit more disappointing. I think there are a few shining lights. I know a lot of people. I weirdly saw a lot of uh, things aimed towards Armstrong in this game, but I think one positive was Armstrong. I think the ability of where he played, his ability to retain the ball, he may have passed it sideways and backwards a lot, but I hate to break it to fans of the club. Look at every good team in Europe right now. They have a player who just passes it backwards, passes it sideways. They may have a bit more passing range, but unfortunately, that's part of it. And I think Armstrong was very composed, very calm on the ball. I don't think he blew the world away, but I think for what is he 17, very promising signs. I think um, McNeil played surprisingly well to say he was miles out of position, and Dye again. I think and to say he was forced out wide, and Dye did quite well. I think there's probably two big talking points about this game if I've got the right game, and that's Beto and Lindstrom. I think I don't know if this is the game where Lindstrom just put on a clinic in missing sitters. I know he did it I think it was this and then Leicester, where the bloke just put in a clinic of just missing chances that you really shouldn't be missing, or you should at least be doing better in. And Beto, I think Beto's an interesting one because I can imagine you're going to touch on this point as well. But the bloke does so well to get into positions, and then I don't know if his brain switches off or he just doesn't have the technical ability to complete what he wants to do. But I think Beto's a frustrating one because I think you could see Beto in a better team scoring 15 league goals just because all they have to do is play the ball into him and he'll tap them in. For us, obviously, it's a bit more plays with back to feet, can't really do what he wants. But I think for me, the big talking points were mainly Lindstrom and Beto, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying to go out of the cup, but I think when we spoke, I said I wasn't that fussed, but it was annoying and like the penalties, Ashley Young, usual suspect again. I just felt a bit sorry for him, but also a bit annoyed because I mean it's the usual suspects. What were your thoughts on the penalties though? And obviously Virginia as well, who had a game. Give me your thoughts on him because I wasn't impressed with Virginia overall.
I can't remember ever really being impressed with Virginia, to be honest. I think for our level, he's an okay backup, but he's one of those where you'd probably hope for an academy lad to have come up and took his place right now. I know Harry Tyra's had a few good loan spells now, but I know there's a lot of hype around him, and we seem to bring in young goalkeepers from all across the EFL, and I think a lot of it is in the hopes of replacing Virginia. But I think he did okay. I think he could have done better on the penalties. I think he let himself down in the penalties, but in the game, I just think he was okay. Nothing special. Didn't really blow me away. I do think he probably should have done better in the penalties, but I also do think he was probably let down by Ashley Young because I think everyone knew he was missing it when he stepped up. There was no confidence in his eyes. There was no. I think it was obvious, and I think it's one where it's just unfortunately for Ashley Young. I'm not going to pretend to sit like as a player on the pitch. I'm not going to sit and pretend like I like Ashley Young. He's on the pitch one of my least favorite Everton players ever. I know the bloke clearly has an impact, so I'm not going to, like I've said, and he's 40, so I can kind of not want to. Like if he was 25, I think the fan base would, I think he'd probably be the most hated player in the Premier League just from our fan base. But I think it's just like it's one of those where I think it's just if, for example, Ndai would have missed it, I think fans would have been fuming. But you had a good game, lad. It's unfortunate these things happen sometimes. But I think because it was Ashley Young, it made it so much worse in a sense, if that makes sense. Oh.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And then moving on, we've got the Leicester 1-1 draw. This was one that I felt was a bit of a missed opportunity. Just give me your thoughts on Leicester.
um, yeah, this one was a weird one because I think this one Um, had a few more positive signs. I think, and Dye's goal was unbelievable. I think, well, when was the last time an Everton player was able to pick the ball up? A good pass from Ashley Young as well, by the way. Which is, if we're gonna crap on Ashley Young, let's give him the credit where he does something well. And again, the ability to just drive around three people and then because it's not like that was an easy finish. He had to turn his body and smash it. Beautiful off the post, 1-0. And I think it's one of those things where you look at it and go, well, there's real positives. And I think you look at the game overall and you go, we were actually able to almost control the game, control possession, keep control. But again, you look at Leicester's goal. Um, you look at it and go, well, really, you look at Leicester and, for example, they had more possession, they had a bit more on the ball, but for example, if any of you use FootMob, you see the momentum bar. Ironically, Leicester score with arguably their least momentum in the half, and I think it sums Everton up. It's typical Everton going to sleep, and all of a sudden it's 1-1, and then I think after Leicester's goal, you saw the spark leave the players' eyes, and it looked for a second like they might get us, and we might bottle another lead. I think at points it really looked like that, and I think you go for example from the first minute all the way up to like the probably like the hour mark. It wasn't the best, but I think at moments we looked like we should have got more than one goal. I do think. I think the XG says 1.1, but I can't imagine in Dye's XG was very high for his goal. To be honest with you, it was again. I don't think any of us expected him to score that, and I think it's one of those where it was a real missed opportunity. I think again, if I just scroll down a little bit here to actually look at the lineups, I think I think Okoli was really struggling there, number five. I think he was really struggling against Calvert-Lewin. And again, the one I've got to mention is they've given him a 7.2 rating here, but Lindstrom, the bloke had probably two or three easy goals. I'm not a Premier League footballer, but yes, easy goals. At the end of the day, the bloke should have scored. And I think I'll give him his credit, is I think he actually does improve the Everton team when he's on, weirdly a little bit more than Harrison in an attacking sense, because I think he has a bit more pace than Harrison. I think he can get him behind a little bit better. But again, I think he's one where we've seen, I know it's only two games, but there's no end product. I honestly can't really remember an Everton player with, this is going to sound mental, but with the first two sample kits with this bad of an end product. I think, he's one of those where now he's fighting an upwards curve, because now whenever he gets one-on-one and goal, everyone's going to be like, here we go again. It's like this, it's the same thing that plagued Calvert-Lewin for years. The thing where we're going to see him get these chances that most players score, and everyone's going to go, "Oh, it's Lindstrom. He's not going to hit this." But yeah, I think Lindstrom, to be honest, for us, is probably the main talking point, because Lindstrom probably could have scored twice or maybe even a hat trick in this game if he'd have really booked his ideas up. To be honest with you.
So obviously that then leads us on after the Leicester game to the announcement that Blue Haven Holdings and the Fredinkin Group confirmed they've reached an agreement with the terms of sale for Everton, for the majority stake in Everton Football Club on the 23rd of September. They did do a statement. It was short and sweet, which, according to Roma fans, is how they like to do it. Just saying they confirm the agreement. The transaction is subject to approval from the Premier League, the FA, and the Financial Conduct Authority. A spokesperson said, "We're pleased to have reached an agreement to be custodians of this iconic club. We're focused on securing the necessary approvals and look forward to providing stability and sharing a vision for the future, including the completion of the new Everton Stadium on Bramley Moor." Give me your thoughts. I know a couple of Roma fans said this is all we'll hear from them. They're not ones to go and be big in the press or communicate. They like to sort of do their dealings in the background, which might be nice after Mashiri. But yeah, give me your thoughts on this, Cal.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, really. I think it's one of those where you look at it and go, of course, thank God it finally happened, first of all. It's one of those where we've been waiting for this for literal years now. And, 3, 4 years now we've been waiting for him to leave. Again, I see weirdly some of the fans trying to like change history and make it out like it's been a little bit better than it was. Yeah, the first 2 years were okay if you actually look at the money spent and the stuff like that. But then again, if you spend £30 million on crap, it's still crap, mate. It doesn't matter how much it's cost you. But I think it's one of those where you look at it and go, it's at the end of an era, a very weird era, an era where at first there was promise, and then it went to arguably the worst phase of the club's history. That's been televised and wasn't back in black and white video. I think it's interesting that we've almost become the Sunderland of the mid. No, we have become the Sunderland of the mid 2010s, of just constant relegation fights and managing to consistently save ourselves just at the right time. But yeah, I think thankfully it's over. They seem to have done well at Roma when it comes to balancing things, and then they do spend the money when it's there. So I think fans should get their hopes up that if the money's there, which it should be with the new stadium and things like that, there will be naturally more money involved, I think, now. But I think it's one of those where, again, don't expect the start of Mashiri where 100 million was just bang, bang. I think it's one where it's going to be a slow process, and the original process is going to be getting the club into a steady position where we're not worrying about FFP every year for now.
Yeah, the census I got from Roma fans is that obviously they've enjoyed some great times for the conference, the Europa Conference League last year. But the main one I got from them is that they will balance the books out really well, and Roma are in a good financial position. I think the Roma fans said they're not making profits, but football clubs, it's very, very hard to make a profit in football. I remember Eddie Hearn's dad talking about it and saying, and Eddie Hearn saying it's the only sport he knows where you lose profits and it's about lowering your losses. When obviously they were involved with Yeovil, but they've balanced it really, really well, which at this point, looking at Everton Football Club, I think we'll all agree is what we need. We need somebody to balance it. If they can balance the club, it means no PSNR troubles coming our way. Although it'll be interesting to see how the rules change again by the time this comes through with the obviously ongoing current case against City and rules changing ever so flippantly nowadays. But yeah, they seem to be the right people we need right now, for certain. And it'll be interesting to see what changes they do make, because obviously, like you said, I don't think they'll come in splashing the cash, but they will make changes, mainly personnel. And it'll be interesting to see if the manager survives those personnel changes. The last game of September, the 28th, Everton Palace, Dwight McNeil stealing the show here. Give me your thoughts on this one, because the first half was a stinker. And then obviously Dwight McNeil's wonder goal. And then from then, I felt like it gave us the grip round the neck and the pulling up that we needed, because the players looked like they'd been, I mean, it looked like they'd been given a rocket anyway at half time by the manager. But that goal was like the final kick up the backside they needed to, put themselves in gear. We looked like we wanted the ball for once.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games where you look at it and really, the first goal, it was very typical, wasn't it? Everton are probably one of the only teams in the Prem that are going to score a goal from a centre back assisting another centre back. It's very Everton, but I think it's one of those where, again, I think Palace were in control for a majority of the first half. I do think. Then we had our moments. I think specifically you look at around I'd say halfway through the first half, if that makes sense, around 20 minutes to half an hour mark, it looked like we really managed to find a foothold on the game. But of course, we weren't really able to capitalise. Half time hit, and from sources, it actually wasn't Sean Dyche, it was Seamus Coleman flipping his lid, which has managed to give the players some life, apparently. Yeah, McNeil continues his fantastic season. The first goal, beautiful again. Again, I'm going to credit Ashley Young here. Ashley Young does very well to press at the right moment, win the ball. And yeah, it's a wonder goal from McNeil, but I think you've got to give some credit to Ashley Young in, once again, pressing at the right time, winning the ball, and then just getting it to McNeil straight away. And McNeil's goal is just it's something you'd expect from one of the best players in the world. That I'm not comparing that to McNeil, but it was one of those where as soon as it left his foot, you went, that's in. You knew. As soon as it left his foot before it even travelled towards the Palace goal, Dean Henderson, yeah. I think it was one of those where you just knew. The second goal, I'll get absolutely what a cross from Jack Harrison. That's probably going to be the best cross Jack Harrison puts in an Everton shirt, to be honest with you. Because again, you see really great work from, I believe it's Calvert-Lewin, is the one in the centre to drag the player away to then leave McNeil open. And I think McNeil again got to take more credit because he didn't just hit it first time. He controls it, gets it down at his feet, and then hits it, which again, it's the sign of a player with real confidence. And I think if I click on McNeil here, we know, again, all Everton fans know he's got the most chances created in the Premier League right now. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists in 6 appearances. Again, so I think it's about a goal contribution every 100 minutes so far, and that's just league games. I don't know if he didn't score in the cup, but again, sorry, he got one against Doncaster. But again, so it's one of those where you look at someone and I think he's the only reason Dyche is in a job. I think this is a lot of McNeil going that he does owe Dyche a lot for his time at Burnley, and he's genuinely, I'll give Dash the credit, he has a player like McNeil working his heart out for him, and it's contributing in this with right now McNeil being arguably I try to think of a word, but the winger with the most contribution to his team in the Premier League right now. Because if we don't have Dwight McNeil, we are rock bottom of the league on 0 points.
Yeah, I saw his stats. This was before this game. He's one of the best for chances created in the top five leagues in Europe. I think only Lamine Yamal and Rafinha beat him. But after the game, who scored have put out his stats now? Most key passes with 21, most accurate through balls with 5, most accurate crosses with 22. This is just in the Premier League. Third most big chances created in the Premier League with 6. 3 goals, 2 assists, and the eighth highest rated overall was 7.6, which is that's who scored ranking. But the others, suffice. And the other 14 put out about him before this game. He's our most creative player by a country mile. It's a shame we don't finish as much as he creates, otherwise we'd be absolutely, flying for goals. But he is having an incredible season, and that within Die, people like don't stick him out on the left. You won't get the best out of him. Stick him in the middle. But we've stuck him out on the left anyway, and we put McNeil inside. And people are worried about his one-footedness, which is a fair worry because he is quite one-footed. But at the minute, he's just really taking advantage with it. And I think, although he's not a player, I'd say he's blistered with pace. I feel like people although he's one-footed, he is capable of turning his body to put it back on his strongest foot. He is I'm going to say good dribbler, which is why people normally associate that with pace. You don't have to be blistering to be a good dribbler. He is good with the ball at his feet to switch it onto his stronger foot. Um, he's just having an incredible season, isn't he? An incredible September as well. He's up for
Yeah, I
Player of
think
the Month as well, which is worth noting. He's up for September's Player of the Month in the Premier
yeah, and
League.
it wouldn't surprise me if he wins it because, again, I might go silent for a little moment here, but so what has he got? 3 goals, 2 assists currently this season. He has got one, two, three, four of those, 4 of his 5 goal contributions, sorry, are in September. And I don't, no one likes maths really, but I decided while you were talking to do some. If McNeil kept up this pace, he would end on 32 goal contributions this season. If he, again, that's if he played all 38 games. So, if to put it in perspective, he'd be doing Cole Palmer level of numbers if he's able to keep up this form. Is he going to? Absolutely not. Realistically, could I see him on 10 goals, 10 assists this season? Don't see why not if he can keep up this level of form. And I think with Dyche and with Ndai and McNeil, again, I'm not a football manager, but there is a clear chance there to have them rotate depending on what's happening. If we need someone who can cross the ball a bit more, again, it's not like him and because again, we've seen him and Harrison do it where they'll swap wings sometimes. So there's no reason why McNeil and Dye can't alternate. And realistically, isn't Dye playing as a winger? Not really. He plays high and wide sometimes, but if you look in Leicester, he was really operating as more of an inside forward sort of player. Wanted that opportunity to cut in. I think he linked up quite well with Mikalenko, which for saying something, I don't know if I've got the right game. I don't know if it's Leicester I'm thinking of, but again, I don't know if I've got the right game here, and I don't want to sit and just stare at my screen for 5 minutes while I'm talking and try to find it. But I think those two can really offer something together in positional versatility. I actually don't think Adai's been as bad as I say fans made out on the left wing. I think it's been massively over exaggerated. I think, yeah, he doesn't get the goal contributions, but he's still clearly contributing to the team's style of play. He's still heavily involved. Again, he still gets a lot of the touches of the ball. He still makes a lot happen. And I think, can you really move McNeil if he keeps playing like this? Again, it's impossible to make that decision. And I'm actually going to agree with that. Why would I move McNeil when he's clearly in form? If he has a stinker in the next few games, in a set of very winnable upcoming games, by the way, then yeah, maybe more considerable. But I think it's one of those now where why change what works, especially after we've just got our first win of the season.
Yeah, I agree. We'll round up September now. Overall, how are you like? What are your overall thoughts on September?
Um,
What would you rate it out of 10? For me, it's probably like a 7. I think 6, 7. I'm bordering on. There's a good win. couple of annoying draws in a cup. I think it may be six.
I think I'm giving it a 7 just for that first Dwight McNeil goal. That I single-handedly got it at a 7. That goal is that good that it's put it up to. I think there was more promising signs. I think immediately you saw the impact of Jared Brantwaite in the Crystal Palace game. Immediately, it was a huge improvement. October, I think we have to cover October if we're going to talk about September, because I think that my thoughts going into October impacts what I think about September. To be honest with you, Newcastle have been good, still beatable. Ipswich are very leaky at the back, and Fulham very good, but also beatable at Goodison Park. I think it's one of those where we said this last month and they didn't listen until right at the end of the month, unfortunately. But we need to be taking things from this Palace game against a Palace side that have been crap this season, but a Palace side that we know can be very good. And we need to push it on into the next game. For example, a win against Newcastle on Saturday all of a sudden changes everything. But yeah, I'd probably say like a 7.
And then finally, before we end, Sean Dyche, obviously, I said to you before, I think will be talking about this all season potentially, unless he goes and does an absolute madness and we finish in the top six. Where do you currently sit with him, and where do you think he sits with the fan base? I still saw people saying Dyche out after the weekend. I saw some saying it at half time, and then some still sticking with what they'd said after the game. What are you standing on? I personally think with how much his release cut his sacking fee is, we might as well just ride it out to the end of the season and see where it goes. I don't think we'll go down. So we might as well just see how it rides out on our last season. And then contract expiring, weigh it up then, weigh up whether he's worth going into Bramley Moore with, and where the squad's at. Or if we go something a bit more, I don't know, adventurous, maybe adventurous. What are your thoughts?
I think it's very much one that it's let's see how. I think it's let's see how October and the start of November goes, because I know Everton have this curse of sacking managers in November. But if we're gonna sack him, to be on, if we don't win a game in October again, or it's a loss and 2 draws, I think the Friedkins are gonna have to bite the bullet, because I think the thing is with Dyche is that the team has shown that again, and if the Seamus Coleman stuff is true, it's not Sean Dyche motivating the players, it's Seamus Coleman. I like Dyche and I do think he can turn it around, which is why I'm more in the middle than specifically, let's say I'm picking a side. But I think it also depends on the managers that are available that'd be willing to join the club. I think if the Friedkins go out and talk to other managers, which I get is not the best idea to do when you've currently got someone employed, but go around, talk to other managers, get the feelers out. If they think they can get someone in that's genuinely better than Dyche and someone who, because I hate to break it to certain people, Sean Dyche brought a lot of these players in. Well, no, Kevin Felwell has. A lot of these players could play a more expansive style of football. I think quite easily. I do think. To be honest with you, if I was that, I'm not asking for like world class pass around people, but you look at, I think Brantwaite and Tarkowski can do it. I think Pickford can obviously do it, seeing him do it for England. Mangala can definitely do it, and Dye can do it. McNeil can do it. Calvert-Lewin can do it. I'm not, I think it's one of those where, again, it's a sharp shift in the style of play, but unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen if we sack Dyche. It's going to be another, Marco Silva to Sam Allardyce, but the opposite way around this time, where it's stop, put it in reverse. Now all of a sudden we're playing more free-flowing pressing style of football, which I think could work, but like you said, it's like £5-6 million just to sack him off. And again, unless there's a real project manager there, like a Carlos Corberán, like someone like of that level, a miracle Thomas Frank gets sacked from Brentford or something like that, unless it's a situation where we have to run over there and take him. I think there's no reason to get rid of him really, unless, like I said, we have a horror month and a half.
Yeah, Thomas Frank's the interesting one though, because I don't watch an awful lot of Brentford, twice a year minimum. But when I do, sometimes I watch them play and I don't think they're massive. When they had Tony as well, sometimes I thought it was very much lump it up to Tony, which isn't too far. I'm not saying that's all they are. That is what some of them is. And people moan that we do that, and it well infuriates me because I'm like, the only difference is obviously Brentford have really good wingers. to play off the striker, and that's Wissa and then Mbumu. Now they're playing. Now that it's a bit different because they don't have Tony, but sometimes I feel like sometimes I don't quite understand it. Sometimes when I've seen them come to Goodison and we go there, I'm watching. It's like watching the keepers have a game of longies with each other sometimes, and I'm like, which is fair. And Frank's done a great job with Brentford. I'm not saying he's not good. What I'm saying is the styles of play are massively different. It's
Yeah.
not like he's Pep Guardiola, is it?
Oh no, I just think he's one of those where he's probably comfortably a bit better than Daj at getting the best out of players. I think see it with Tony, seeing it with Wissa, seeing it with Mbemo, seeing it with Ericsson, seeing it with I know Ericsson's Christian Eriksen. It's not, but bloody fresh off a heart attack, coming back and playing as well as he did. The manager has to play a part in that, and I think he's one where, again, I'm not clamoring for him, but I think he's one where I can kind of get it if something happens and the club go right. Sorry, Dyche, mate. Again, I think it's all up to if the Friedkins are willing to stump up the 5 million and how much it really impacts our FFP. Because if the Friedkins are looking at it and going, let's just say in a hypothetical world we have 15 million left before we go over, and that's transfer budget. I know that's not how it works, but that's why I said hypothetical. Say there's 15 million. Say even if there's 10, what are we going to really buy for 10 million in January? If Sean Dyche is having a horror, just get rid of him if you have to. But I think they're going to stick with him till the end of the season. To be honest, I think I kind of get why a lot of the Everton board and people around the club are saying he's earned this, because I'll give him his credit. I think that season where he kept us up, I think even last season, but the season before as well, everyone thought we were going to go down. I think even our fans thought this is it now. And I think last season he showed that he can get this team to be comfortably mid-table. And you might have to correct me here, didn't we have a really bad start last season as well? Or was it we had a good
He's never
start and then
won
a
in
really
August.
bad middle?
He's never won in August. He always has a bad start at Everton. But we went on to beat Liverpool, and without the points deductions, we'd have finished very, amongst the likes of Brighton, who people rave about every year. I think obviously it's been a really rugged start to this season. But I think he does, and people are getting annoyed when people say it. But I think he does have credit in the bank still.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and like the next couple, Newcastle's a tough game, but not still beatable. And then after that, we've got a nice run. Come back to me after going into November after that easy run, that United game. If we're winless coming up to United, then I start to panic and I do start to go, yeah, you know what, you're right. You were right all along. Well done. Maybe we need to bite the bullet and get rid of him. But I think he's still got just that little bit of credit still to run where we've got to go. Let's just see
Yeah.
it out,
I,
see what he does for the next
I
month.
think one thing as well that we have to give him credit. What did we end up as? Well, we were still like a top four defensive team at the end of the year, weren't we? Or at least top six.
I'm
So
sure
let's
we
put
had
that.
like one of the top two, three for most clean sheets. Pickford was up
Yeah.
there, the goal of the keeper of the
So
season.
let's just piece together this season. Let's be honest, we can probably point to 3 or 4 goals that were just Michael Keane's fault this season. No offense to Michael Keane, fantastic striker, terrible centre back. But I think it's one of those where Branthwaite comes in, you immediately see a defensive improvement. Palace's goal was one where you can look at it and go, it was little bit lucky. It's one of those where ball bounces about a bit. Unfortunately, something like that happens. Unlucky. Move on. We've not struggled scoring goals this season at all. I put it simply. All it takes is for that Branthwaite Tarkowski connection to click again. And it's not like we had fullbacks last year. Let's not. It's not like we had any good fullbacks last year. Let's get that very clear. So it's one of those where if the defense can click again after a few runs of games together, and the attack can keep scoring, why can't we finish 12th again? We could finish 12th when we had no goals and all defending. If there's a better balance in the team, which may lead to us conceding a little bit more, but we're scoring a little bit more, I realistically don't think there's any reason why we can't finish in the same area of the table again without a points deduction this time. Because if I'm going to be honest with you, I think 2 of the 3 relegation spots are already locked in. I think for example, you look at bloody Manchester United are only 3 points ahead of us. I know they've been crap as well. All it takes is 2 wins, and all of a sudden we're in the top half of the table. If results go our way, I think it's one of those where it's been a bad start. Let's see how it goes now. Like exactly what you said. Let's see how it goes now. If we're in the same situation in a month's time, then yeah, he probably has to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that wraps it all up though for this month's review. Thank you for joining me, Carl. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, thank you
Don't
for having me on again.
Yeah, no worries. Don't forget, guys, to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already for all Everton content coming forward. And comment down below your rating out of 10 for the season. I'm sure it will be very varied opinions. But yeah, stay safe, guys. See you soon.